Here. How are you guys doing? It is almost the end of October and I cannot believe that I am saying that right now. I just can't wait for it to be November, honestly. Actually, I'm gonna take that back. I'm so excited for this last week and a half of October, but I have also so many parties, which I'm so excited for. I have so many Halloween costumes ready and I just need to remind myself to be present through it all, because the minute November starts, guys, winter arc is beginning and I'm excited because I'm definitely going to make a podcast on that. But also winter doesn't start till the end of November, so we've got a little bit of time. In the meantime, it is still fall. And you guys, my birthday just passed. I had a very exciting past weekend and I feel like I need to tell you guys a little bit about it before we go into today's episode. On Friday, I had my friend Michelle's birthday and it was so much fun. She basically planned a murder mystery birthday party and she went the whole mile. She did everything from catering to a beautiful custom cake. She made basically characters for everybody and everybody had to tap into their character, wear the outfit that the character would wear. The character had objectives, it had a personality, and then basically we all had to act as this character at the dinner party. There were little envelopes with tasks you had to do that corresponded to the course of the meal we were on. So for example, when we were all on the appetizer, we had 2 actions that we had to perform, I guess, throughout the appetizer to kind of make the story go along. My character was Fifi Fontaine, and basically she was a Hollywood actress who was tired of experiencing fakeness and wanted to move to see the real world and wanted to experience life. And low-key, why was that easy to tap into? Obviously, I feel like as an influencer trying to cosplay a Hollywood actress where everything is about her, quite easy to tap into, but it was so much fun. There were a bunch of different characters that had accents. They all had a different kind of style, while it kind of remained on the 1920s vibe. But it was so cute and all of our friends went all out, and I'm honestly just so shocked because I didn't think people were gonna go out like that. And the minute I got there, people were in character and I was like, wait a second, is everybody a theater kid here? Because I did not get the memo that I was going to be acting tonight and actually doing improv. And although this isn't the point of today's episode, just to give a little bit of a reflection on even that night, it kind of reminded me how important and fun it is to get out of your shell and do something new like this, like practicing improv, practicing acting, practicing tapping into a character, and kind of cosplaying. Why was that more fun than I even expected? And it's something that I would typically shut down. Usually I don't like doing, actually, again, I'm saying I don't like it, but I've never even done it, so I'm being a hater right now. Things like escape rooms, that just sounds like something I don't want to do. A murder mystery sounds kind of similar, but it was actually so much fun. So it was also so fun to cosplay as this really confident character. And it kind of made me realize, I should have an alter ego like that. Not necessarily the full way where she's kind of a little bit, actually, she's not even super self-centered, my character. I kind of made her self-centered just to exaggerate the character more. But her description was that she was elegant, captivating, plays the crowd, and flirtatious. And so my confidence was through the roof because I was acting. But at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should just not be acting and make this like an alter ego. And whenever I go socialize, I just kind of cosplay as this character that's super captivating and elegant and playing the crowd, as she said. Michelle actually filmed the entire dinner party, and then Saturday was my birthday, and I kind of chose a different theme this year, which actually another thing I kind of want to talk about. I decided to make the theme of my birthday this year kind of like a dark feminine energy, Lana Del Rey, cherry, Coca-Cola, a little bit of cards randomly. I have a picture of an ace on the wall. To the untrained eye, it might just be kind of dark and seductive, but to the trained eye, you know that all of those adjectives and describing words I just used paint a very particular aesthetic. And it was funny because Michelle's decor was also red, but I'm like, no, to the trained aesthetic eye, they're such different aesthetics while having similar color palettes. Hers was glam, 1920s, newspaper, vintage, old, anyways, it was just really interesting because I used some of her decor, but it actually ended up looking so different to her party. So anyways, I made that the theme for this year, and I thought it it would just be a fun theme to switch things up. Every year I do a different theme. When I turned 19, I did a space cowgirl theme, which was very fun. When I turned 20, it was very pink glitter. When I turned 21, it was actually kind of similar to this theme. It was very like black and sexy. And my cake said Libra baby and it was pink. When I turned 22, guys, the fact that I'm like had this many birthdays on YouTube is kind of giving me a headache right now. But when I turned 22, I actually did two things. I had a Lauderay kind of pink and green pastel tea party luncheon, and I made it all kind of like Lauderay inspired, macaroon inspired. And then I also had like a Mexican salsa fiesta party, which was like black and very colorful. And so for my 23rd birthday, it was dark feminine, energy, sexy, Lana, cherry cola, Stargirl vibe, okay? If you couldn't tell, I love nailing an aesthetic. There might be nothing more I love than picking an aesthetic and just like bringing it to life. But it's funny because I did get some comments being like, oh my God, Fernanda switched her aesthetic. Oh my God, the duality between this and her last year. This is the revenge dress. And as you guys know, I've recently been through a breakup. It's funny because people, I feel like, were associating this to me being like, I'm single now, I can be sexy, I can whatever. Like literally there were multiple comments saying that this was my revenge dress when I genuinely didn't. Why would I have revenge towards my ex-boyfriend when there was no beef? And also they were like, oh my God, the aesthetic switch up. And I'm like, guys, it's literally a theme. What else? Someone else commented, oh, her single era, in her single era. I'm like, guys, I did this black theme when I turned like 21. Now let's get into today's episode. We are talking about my solo travel adventures. If you didn't already know, I was in Europe for 2.5 weeks and I traveled alone. I've talked about it so many times. So if you're an avid Better You listener, you would already know what I'm about to say. But if this is your first time listening to me, I don't know, you're just popping in and you're like, I haven't heard this. This is for you. I grew up being type B girly, losing everything. This is actually still me. I did in fact lose my phone, credit cards, and all my IDs in LA like a month ago. But I grew up losing all my things, always forgetting things, being a little bit sometimes, I would be called a blonde, if you know what I mean. And I literally wasn't blonde. Just a little bit absent-minded in some ways. Maybe it's the ADHD. But anyways, I probably would have never thought that I would have been able to go to Europe by myself, go to multiple different countries, and like navigate that experience without anybody else. I genuinely don't think I would have just even like considered that been an option for me. I have traveled to New York, LA, and Montreal alone, but going to Europe, going to a new continent, going to countries that speak a different language, that is a different ballgame, especially after recently getting out of a relationship. Like there's just so many hurdles right there, but that I did. I was away for 2.5 weeks, I think. I went to London, then Paris, then Lisbon in Portugal, a different city in Portugal, back to Lisbon, London for a day, and then back to Lisbon, and then home. Like, that is a lot. It says online that solo traveling offers a unique opportunity for personal growth and self-discovery. Very true. It allows you to embrace independence, make your own decisions, and explore destinations at your own pace, fostering a sense of empowerment. Also extremely true. I will talk about that more later, but I love being able to do whatever I want, whenever I want. Traveling alone encourages you to step outside of your comfort zone, helping you build confidence and adaptability. Additionally, it provides ample chances to connect with diverse cultures, meet new people, often leading to unexpected friendships and experiences. Extremely true. I made so many friends this trip. I literally came back with like a roster of new friends, and if anything, it's paining me to not be able to continue those friendships, but I definitely will be online. Lastly, it says solo traveling also allows for deep reflection and mindfulness as you immerse yourself in the present moment without distractions, ultimately enriching your perspective on life and the world around you. Again, another bar. I genuinely feel like I've learned the most and I've been able to gather the most amount of wisdom through my traveling and through meeting new people, being in new circumstances, and then being able to reflect on those situations. On this past trip, since I obviously had a lot of time alone, I definitely did a lot of journaling. Also, I didn't really speak about my breakup, obviously, while it was happening while I was in Europe, just because I didn't want to talk about it yet. But now that it's already happened, I've literally said it on every platform. I feel like I can talk about it. So, you know, I kind of hate talking about it because it feels like something that I should keep to myself, but at the same time, whatever, y'all know me. So anyways, while I was on my trip, I brought a journal and I was journaling a lot about my breakup, and it was honestly very helpful to me. So I definitely feel like I left that trip with a lot of new revelations and reflections. It also said online that when a person travels a lot alone, they often undergo significant personal transformation. This journey fosters independence and self-reliance, allowing them to navigate unfamiliar environments and make decisions autonomously. And that brings us to the sponsor of today's video, which is Shopify. I don't know if you knew already, but nobody does it like Shopify. They're home of the #1 checkout on the planet. And they have the not so secret that is that they have Shop Pay that boosts conversions up to 50%, which means that way less carts are going abandoned and way more sales are going up. If you are growing your business or your commerce platform, then be ready. Businesses that sell more sell on Shopify. If you want to upgrade your business and maybe want to use the same checkout such as Alo or Skims, sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/abetteryou, all in lowercase letters. Go to shopify.com/abetteryou to upgrade your selling today. One more time, that's shopify.com/abetteryou. Thank you, Shopify, for sponsoring this portion of the video, and let's get back to it. I feel like I've become really good at making my own decisions and sticking by it, not being so indecisive, which I feel like is something that I used to really struggle with. They learn to embrace solitude, developing a deeper understanding of themselves and their preferences. This I also think is true. I feel like I know myself really well. If someone was to ask me questions about myself, I would be able to give them like a full analysis on my personality and how I work and the way I do things, and I'm okay with my shadow self and like my great qualities. And I definitely think that comes down to spending a lot of time with yourself and trying to understand yourself, which may happen when you spend a lot of time alone. Regularly stepping outside of their comfort zone builds confidence, resilience, and problem-solving skills. Agreed. And I also have an episode on why you need to step outside of your comfort zone. So definitely watch that video because I talk a lot about my solo travels and how it has helped my confidence tremendously. Additionally, the experience often leads to memorable interactions with locals and fellow travelers, cultivating a sense of connection and shared humanity. Ultimately, frequent solo travel can lead to profound personal growth and a more enriched, open-minded approach to life. 100% agree. I love that. I honestly want to be friends with a bunch of people that are well-traveled just because I feel like they have so many things to say and so many unique perspectives. So anyways, that is a little bit of a description that I found online, some key, I feel like, takeaways of solo traveling. But to go on about my trip, let me tell you guys, originally I wasn't even trying to do a solo trip. I actually think that it benefited me tremendously to go on this solo trip, and I'm so happy that it happened, but it was definitely not planned or intentional. In fact, I was actually supposed to go on a 2.5-week trip to Portugal with my friends, and I literally paid for all the Airbnbs, so I kind of wasted a lot of money there. A bunch of things just kind of happened in alignment that I was really excited about that ended up just me not being able to go to Portugal to see my friends. So it all started off with Tam Kaur. She is a YouTuber, podcaster, and she invited me to be on her podcast in London. And I was so excited when I got this opportunity because she has a very similar niche than I do, and I just love her content. So I was like, this is great. I should go to London before I go to Portugal. So I decided to go to London to film that podcast. I think it's coming out in November. I love the way it turned out. I think it went really well. And even that experience was so fun to meet her and just, meet another creator. I was there for like 5 days. So I did a lot of solo traveling through London. And then it was Paris Fashion Week the week after. So I was like, okay, why don't I just go to Paris? So then I was in Paris for a week, and then I got offered to go to a yoga retreat in Portugal, and I was like, no way, I'm literally going to be in Portugal. I think I should just go to this retreat. So I went to Lisbon for a few days on my own, went to the yoga retreat in a place near Evora, which is kind of like in the middle of Portugal. It might be Évora, I'm not sure. And then I ended up meeting my friends in Lisbon for the last and final day. So at least I had that, but that is why I was alone in so many situations. And honestly, I didn't feel super lonely just because I kept meeting up with people. When I was in London for the first few days, I hung out with like 4 new people. And then in Paris, I met like 4 other people that I was really close with. And like, things like that. I just kept meeting people. So let's get into the things I learned. Starting off with number 1, I've learned to be self-reliant, independent, and self-sufficient. I talked about this already, but I had it written down, so I'll just say it again. As somebody who always struggled with this and relied on others to help me, it was a bit of an adjustment, obviously doing everything by myself, but I realized that I was more than capable. And I will say, for the first few days after like doing all the airports and getting the hotels and the transportation, I felt like I had lived 20 days in the span of like 2 days. And I think it was because, the wheels in my brain were turning. They were so turned on. I was so hyper aware. I was constantly on the lookout, like, are all my things together? Am I going to lose my passport? Do I have the right times for everything? I was definitely overly exhausted the first few days because of this, but it got way easier by the end of the trip and it just became second nature to me. And also, can I just say, I didn't lose a single thing on this trip, so thank God. The second thing is that kind of goes off of this first one is that I learned to be aware of myself and my own surroundings. I was constantly on the lookout and just making sure that I was in a safe place, looking to see if there was any suspicious people around me, which you should be doing as I feel like a female, just a person in general, you should be aware of your surroundings. And I feel like I got really good at making the decisions on which places were safe to go to and which places kind of called for me to not enter, or, what times to maybe go home at. I also felt like I was a little bit more responsible. I wouldn't stay out too late, or I wouldn't be in places where I felt unsafe. The third thing I've learned while solo traveling is to let down my walls when meeting new people. Something that I've learned about myself is that when I go to social settings, I'm able to turn on that social side of myself and be super chatty and make new friends and network and just socialize and be extroverted and outgoing. But something that I have noticed is that when I put myself in those situations, it's usually when I know what I'm going into. I kind of have a moment to talk myself into being like, okay, you're going to go socialize. Like, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be confident. You're going to be talkative, whatever. But in those situations, I always have control over how I'm being perceived, how I'm going to act, etc. Whereas I've noticed when I'm just out and about on my own, sometimes I can be more shy and reserved when someone comes and talks to me. And it's because I'm not mentally prepared to socialize yet, or I'm a little bit more closed off. I'm a little bit more in my own world, or I'm not in control of the interaction. If someone just catches me off guard, I'm going to be like, wait a second. I wasn't prepared for that. The other thing is that in Vancouver, and this is not just me saying this, I feel like this is a widely known stereotype, but that people aren't super talkative to you as strangers. I could go the whole day walking around the city and no one will say anything to me, and then I'll go to a new country and everyone's all of a sudden just so chatty, and it catches me off guard because I'm used to my own city where I go out and I don't expect people to be talking to me the same way that I probably have that bad habit, and I go to other cities and I don't talk to people on the streets just because I'm they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing. But in Europe, it's everyone talks to each other. Even in New York, I feel like people are always talking to me, and sometimes I get caught off guard. But this is why this point comes into hand, where I've learned to let my wall down, and when someone comes to me new and wants to spark up a conversation, obviously if it feels safe, I don't immediately need to be saying the bare minimum and just kind of exiting. I can actually follow through with that interaction and make a new connection. Something I tell myself is that everyone has something to offer. Everyone has something to teach you. You have something to learn from everyone. And so just shutting down conversations, even if, you're not going to be friends or you don't want anything from the other person, I feel like you should follow through with it just to see what they have to say, just to see what happens, just to even test your own social skills, and obviously of common decency. But my point of that was to say that I'm learning to be more open for when people spark up conversations randomly and I'm not in control of it. And maybe sometimes I don't even look good, I'm not presentable, I'm not prepared for it. It's just letting it be how it is. Also, if you want to add depth to your experience of solo traveling, you sparking up conversations with strangers is definitely a key thing to do and something that will be so beneficial to you. The fourth thing that I learned while I was away is the things that I genuinely enjoy doing without the influence of anyone else. And you may think you know what you like doing, but maybe there are times where you agree to something because the other people want to do it, but when you go by yourself, you get to really realize what you enjoy doing most. And so the things that I personally enjoy doing while I'm solo traveling is walking by feet, just exploring the city with no plan. And some people don't like that at all. Some people want to have it to the T, planned weeks before, months before, reservations booked. I'm realizing I would rather just pick an area and explore that for the day. And I'm not even gonna lie, I did that multiple times and I ended up actually stumbling across the big monuments that were the top sightseeing things to do. So it was actually beneficial that I went to those areas and just explored for hours. I love planning my itinerary the day of. I love going on TikTok and finding recommendations for places that locals go to. I like asking people, maybe it's DMing an influencer, creators, or people that live in that city, asking people that you know that have traveled there before. That's like what I like to do. I also love going to new coffee shops, getting some nice sweet treats, maybe doing some work there, maybe reading, journaling. I love going to restaurants by myself. I'm a big foodie, so I will be trying all the food. I also love going to parks and sitting in the grass and just kind of enjoying the beauty around me. And actually, I'm a big music listener, but I've realized that I actually prefer not listening to music when I'm walking around. For one, for safety, but for two, just so I can like hear the ambiance of the city that I'm in. I also love visiting sunset spots and even going vintage shopping or just visiting thrift stores. Even if I don't buy anything, I think it's very fun to go to vintage shops that are from different cities to yours. I also am so down to go to bars and just like I love experiencing the nightlife, even if it's by myself, which we're going to discuss later. The next thing that I learned that I actually need to be better at is getting better at being okay with being perceived alone. This is something that I feel like a lot of us struggle with, but it is when you go to maybe a restaurant by yourself and you start to get in your head of like, is this weird that I'm alone? Do people think I'm lonely? Do people think it's weird that I'm alone? And I usually don't feel like that whenever I go like in Vancouver to like restaurants by myself. But I went to a fancy restaurant in Lisbon by myself and immediately I was just like in my head being like, is this weird? Why do I feel like everyone's watching me right now? And in reality, I mean, yes, you're probably being watched, but it's not that big of a deal. It's one of those spotlight effects where you think everyone's paying attention to you and they're not. So that is definitely a skill that I have to be better at and something that I learned to be okay with while I was away. And also, if you haven't done this before, definitely get outside of your comfort zone and try going to a restaurant alone. It is so helpful for you and I feel like it's a good skill to be able to have and to be okay with. The other thing that I love doing while I'm alone is sitting and reflecting. Honestly, just thinking. I feel like I have such a blast just thinking and then Googling my thoughts and then thinking about what I just Googled and then that making another thought and then Googling that thought. Genuinely, that's how I spent a lot of my time alone. I actually had a stranger come up to me. Anyways, it somehow got to the point where we were talking about reflecting when you're just on your own thinking. And he was like, I mean, yeah, you can think about stuff, but after a while and once you've thought about that thought enough, it kind of just settles and it's fun to just travel and not have any thoughts. Like you're just observing what's around you. And I totally agree with that. I kind of didn't realize that that's what I was doing, but I guess once you finish overthinking or you have nothing to think about, it's so nice to just walk along new streets and just not have any thoughts in mind, just observing, just being present and just enjoying what's around you. Another thing that I've noticed on this past trip, which I'm not surprised by, but I really love being adventurous and spontaneous. And for some reason, adventurous wasn't a word that I would associate with myself. Like I would definitely say spontaneous, I would definitely say traveling, but adventure is something that I just never thought about correlating that word to me. But after this trip, I would say I'm pretty adventurous. I was honestly down for anything and whatever. And I met a lot of people and they would kind of ask me like, what do you want to do? And I was like, literally take me to do what you like doing in your city. Take me to do whatever you want to do and I will match the energy. I will match the vibe. I'm just there to experience it all. So I feel like that's being pretty adventurous. And when I told you I went to London for one day at the end of my trip, I actually wasn't supposed to go back to London. I was supposed to go back to Portugal. And somebody else was like, why don't you just come for one night? Like there's gonna be this crazy party. You can sleep over at my house. Like why don't you just do it? So that flight was booked and I literally went to London for one night. And that's definitely the opposite of probably a type A person, like very on schedule. I just did it. And I was very fortunate enough to be able to make that spontaneous decision. But it just kind of reinforced how much I love saying yes and how much I love adapting to new situations. Even if that means compromising my sleep, I will stay up extra late. I will be uncomfortable for that extra little bit. I will just be outside of my comfort zone in order to create those memories and to like have the fun. I know a lot of people say like, you will never regret staying in. But honestly, I've regretted every time I've stayed in. I've never regretted going out. Even if the going out is bad, I'm like happy that I did it so that I knew. So it's funny how everybody's kind of level of downness is very different. Another way I like to embrace spontaneity me is by wandering freely. So, like I said, exploring new parts of the city with no map, no schedule, no time limit, and just walking by feet. Just overall getting lost in new places and discovering hidden gems. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that I pondered about on my solo travels is it's really interesting to see how you introduce yourself to new people where nobody knows who you are. I feel like I talk about this a lot, but it always is just such an interesting thought to me how when you don't have things surrounding you that you grew up with or that are nostalgic or people that have known you for so long, when you don't have that around you and that familiarity, it's so interesting how you move through the world and what you choose to do and how you choose to act and how you choose to introduce yourself. Again, being that I am newly single, I feel like I have to make an episode at some point on my single, how it feels to be single. And again, not single in I mean single as in just not being in a relationship. Obviously, when I went to Europe, it was just fresh breakup. So I'm not really trying to do that, whatever. But I had men approach me, which is not, I've had men approach me before, but usually I just be like, I have a boyfriend and shut that off real quick. And so this time I had a few people approach me, and obviously, I could have used the excuse of having a boyfriend even though I didn't have one, but I just kind of let the conversation play out just to see what was going to happen. And this one man asked me, man was trying to plan a date, and I was just how do I tell him that that's not going to happen? But he was asking me what hobbies I do and what I like and what my job is. And it was just so interesting. And I'm I've never had to tell somebody that's a man who's really intrigued by me, what my hobbies are, or what I like to do. I never even ended up seeing this person again, but it was interesting in that moment, seeing how my own reaction would be, seeing what my own responses would be. So anyways, I feel that's just a cool part of solo traveling is just seeing how you act. Also, not only in a situation like that, but when making new friends, I went out with a bunch of people that I didn't know multiple times and just seeing how you act in those big social settings with different friend groups. And then the last thing that I just enjoyed about solo traveling was just kind of seeing what I thought about when I had nothing to think about, if that makes sense. What from my subconscious mind would come to the surface and that I kept constantly thinking about. It's just interesting to know what comes across your mind often. Anyways, now let's get into some tips on how to integrate yourself more and romanticize the city that you're in and just solo traveling in general. My first tip is to look cute and be presentable. I feel this is a tip for just everyday life in general, but when you look cute, you're excited to be seen, you're excited to go out, you're excited to keep exploring. And I felt when I looked cute, I just wanted to keep going to the next place and the next place and taking more photos versus when I don't feel good in my outfit, I just wanted to go back to the hotel. I didn't even want to be out and about. So I felt really good when I was put together. I looked good and I felt presentable. I feel I was even walking around the city with some confidence that could be felt from a mile away. The other tip is to not walk around with earphones, which I talked about earlier, but when you have earphones in, you're closing yourself off from people coming to talk to you. And as a solo traveler, sometimes you want actually people to come talk to you. So definitely take the earphones out. And also, like I said, it is interesting to hear the music on the streets, the people on the streets, just people watching, overhearing little conversations, maybe in different languages. It is just much more fun and also a lot safer. Whenever I don't have earphones in, I feel I'm a magnet for people to come talk to me. Whereas when I have earphones on, there's only a few that are brave enough to make you take your earphones off to actually have a conversation with. The next tip is to bring a journal so that you can write about your thoughts instead of just being on your phone. As I said, I did this. It was so helpful during my healing era to just write about what I was thinking and what I was feeling, even when I didn't think that I had something to write about. Obviously, the thoughts came down to the page and I ended up writing about things that I didn't even mean to write about. Not only that, but if you keep a travel journal, you can journal about the places you visited, the people you've met, and the overall thoughts and experiences you've been having. And then you can kind of keep it as a travel journal while also maybe taping little tickets or receipts or just cute stuff from your travels. You could also write poetry or make sketches and drawings of your surroundings. The next tip is to literally vlog. As a YouTuber, content creator, I'm constantly filming and taking photos and videoing what's around me. And it's always so satisfying to look back on the footage and look back on those memories. And obviously, as a creator, that's my job. But even if you aren't a creator, just honestly do it. It is so much fun, such a good outlet. And you don't have to be a professional. You don't have to have it be your full-time job to be able to enjoy the hobby of filming and recording and just vlogging your experience. Not only that, but I feel like sometimes when you are vlogging, you kind of have an incentive to do more, say more, reflect more, show more, and you just end up doing more. This can help you solidify your memories, have video footage to look back on. Also, I mean, if you want to get into content creation, it is a perfect opportunity for you to use your travels to gain a following or to practice your skills with storytelling, videography, photography, just overall having an eye for aesthetics. My next tip is to go out. I know not everybody loves to go out. There's some homebodies out there, but again, I feel like you can't fully know a city unless you know the daylight and the nightlife. Like, I just feel like the nightlife makes a big part of the city, especially if you're in a city that really prioritizes that nightlife. And also in Europe, you don't need to be clubbing, but like a lot of people go to dinners really late, and I just feel like it's very fun to be a part of it and not just be in your hotel. You can go to the locations and listen to the music that is big for the locals. And not only is this going out at night, but going out in general, if you have extra time, rather than spending it in your hotel room, see if you can spend it at a park or at a coffee shop doing your work there instead of just like in your hotel. Again, rest is great, but if you are traveling, I feel like it's fun to just immerse yourself in different places. My next tip is to actually DM people to make friends. I know that it is easy because I'm a content creator and I have a following to just DM another content creator and ask them to hang out, and it is likely that they will reply, but you honestly never know. Even if you don't have a following, DMing creators or influencers or people with followings, they could reply and want to hang out with you too. So what I would do if I were you and you didn't have a following is like, you could search up, for example, when I was in Lisbon content creators, people creating content in Lisbon. There's a few people with a few followings. You see that they have a good vibe, DMing them on Instagram, being like, hey, I'm in the city. Any chance you want to hang out? Honestly, do it. I literally did this with people in Paris and in London, and I didn't do it in Lisbon, but I actually found a creator that was from Lisbon. And actually, side note, so annoying, but after I left, I posted a video that I was in Lisbon and I had people reach out to me asking to hang out, and I was like, I wish I did this sooner. You also could just post a video and be like, I'm in Lisbon, anyone want to hang out? And see if there's any people that seem like they would align with you, and obviously don't look suspicious, look fun, just get your vibe. Also, I'm sure there's like groups you can join. There's just a lot of different ways, but don't be afraid to reach out with people online. I love going on like friendship dates, and the amount of friendship blind dates I've been on, I am actually a pro at it now. And there's nothing I love more than having friends all around the world and just being so widely connected. Like, that is something I really value. Be open to hanging out with the locals, even asking people in person. Maybe you're at the beach and you see people playing volleyball. Maybe you can ask them. Maybe going to a workout class and asking someone beside you if they want to go for coffee after. Don't be afraid. People are kinder than you think, and also it will make all the difference for you. And sometimes, I even have to remind myself this, it may be humbling to ask someone because you're like, what if they say no? What if they don't reply? But if you don't even send the initial text, it's already a no. At least by sending it, you have the possibility of it being a yes. When I was in Paris, one of the nights I had no plans, and I remembered I met this girl in Paris last year. I've only met her once in my life, okay? But we followed each other on Instagram. I literally DM'd her and I was like, hey girl, any chance you want to hang out? We literally went that night out to like 3 different clubs, stayed out till 6 a.m. We hung out the next day again, and we're like making plans for the future, okay? So all of that can happen just by you putting yourself out there and even seeing if there's a possibility for people to want to hang out. You will never know until you try, and it's a good skill to have. My next tip to integrate yourself into the city is to take the metro. As somebody who is very paranoid and low-key always afraid of everything, also scared of so many instructions, you would think I would hate to take the metro. And in fact, I was like, I might just be an Uber girl this whole trip. But I said, Fernanda, you're going to learn to take the freaking metro in London and in Paris. And that I did. And it was actually much easier than I thought. I just used Google Maps. I used my eyes. I was reading the signs. I am not afraid to ask people around me for questions. And I honestly killed that. I was really happy for myself because, again, with instructions, sometimes I'm just like, I can't, but I actually did a really good job. And you get to like see the view and the scenery. Like in Paris, taking the metro on certain lines gets you like such good views of the Eiffel Tower. So that was very much worth it for me. You also just get to feel like a local, which is very fun. Another tip, which is easy if you're in places like Europe, but is to give yourself a step count goal. For example, hitting 10,000 steps a day. That was kind of my goal. And not only did it motivate me to get my steps in, which is a good little workout while you're on vacation, but it just made me stay out more and like keep walking, keep exploring. And, you know, it made me not want to go home after maybe if I just had like a few things to do that day and I didn't even walk around and explore the city as much. Another tip is to use TikTok shamelessly for recommendations. I literally used TikTok nonstop to find the cutest aesthetic cafes, restaurants, bars, places to go out, photo locations, museums. Like, just don't be afraid to use it. I'm sure a lot of you already would use it shamelessly, but like if there's people older than me listening to this and maybe they don't use TikTok, don't knock it till you try it. It has way better recommendations than Google, I swear. Also, I'm a visual person. I love seeing where the place I'm gonna go to looks like, which is also, side tip, a really good reason why you should probably create content when you're on vacation, because your videos might blow up from other people searching for them. Another tip I have for you that especially applies to me as a content creator is to not post your location until you leave where you're at. I feel like this is really important for solo travelers, for female travelers. Just don't post your location until you have left the spot. Maybe it's obvious, but it's a good reminder. Another way I love to integrate myself into the city is by trying the food of the locals and going to local gems, not just the places that are like the fancy, nice chain restaurants or even the fast food or even just like the basic places. Like, go to those little hidden gems that have like only one location. Get the real experience. Try the different cuisines. Get outside of your comfort zone, especially if you're a picky eater. Also, like, trying the candy and the snacks from those places is a very fun way to romanticize it and just get into it more. Another tip I have for you, which is easy and simple, but it's just to not be afraid to ask the people around you for directions, for suggestions, for recommendations, for tips. Like, use your resources and don't be afraid, because I don't know, maybe you think like people won't want to help you or like you're being a nuisance or whatever. Just ask for help. People are there to help you, and it's a way to connect to humanity. Another reminder is to be mindful of where you're going out if you're a girl and you're going out at night. I just feel like you have to be extra careful and extra aware of your surroundings, always looking around, seeing if anyone's following you, seeing if you lost anything, just being aware. And also, you know, I feel like this goes without saying, but like if you're drinking, maybe only having one, like not drinking more than you should when you are alone, just being extra cautious and extra conscious. Another thing that I love to do myself that I feel like is a good tip for you guys is to practice being present and to practice being mindful. This is a lot easier when you are alone because you do remind yourself to do this, but there were many times during my trip where I would just be so grateful and happy that I'm literally there, that I would have to stop and like really take a mental image of where I was, just really look around and like say to yourself, like, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so happy to be here. Honestly, I would point out things around me, like, look how green the grass is, look at those people talking, look at that tree over there, look at the sound, what can I hear, what can I touch, what can I smell, just really getting grounded where you are and being aware, I feel like makes that memory get locked into your brain, as well as it's just so nice to have gratitude. And I feel like your vibe just expands when you keep saying to yourself how grateful you are, how thankful you are, and you're just gonna have such a good experience and have a happier outcome and a happier mindset. It's one of those like stop to smell the roses scenario where it really, you just feel like you're romanticizing the situation, even if you're like literally just sitting down on a patch of grass. You could turn that patch of grass to a luscious, vibrant green vibe with the birds chirping and the blue sky, and you're so grateful that you're alive, and like you can make it a whole moment. Another way you can romanticize your solo travels is by listening to a playlist or listening to music that corresponds to the place you're in. So for example, when I was in Paris, when I was listening to music, when I was like getting ready or just in my hotel room, I would listen to like Parisian jazz, Parisian music, French music. When I was in London, I was listening to some UK rap, random but honest. When I was in Lisbon, I was trying to listen to some music in Portuguese. It just makes everything so much better. You can also create a playlist maybe with new songs that you learned from that location, and it's just such a good memory to look back on. And also it's just fun to make playlists. The next thing I want to say to you guys is to not feel embarrassed to take photos of yourself. Honestly, it was kind of an awakening for me this trip when I didn't have another person there to be able to take my photos, which may sound so stupid to you guys, but as someone whose job is to take photos and take videos, I was like, wait, I literally don't have anyone to take photos of me. This is tragic. And so I shamelessly had to take take a million selfies, to take self-timer photos, to take videos of myself, to use my OctoBuddy. It was so humbling, but every time it was like exposure therapy, and I got better at it by the end of it. I even had to ask some girl to take a photo of me, and it was so uncomfortable, but I had to do what I had to do because, my dad reminded me this. I kept sending photos of like the view and what I was looking at, and he was like, "Where are you in these photos? For all I know, you weren't even there." And I was like, you know what? You're right. As much as I love seeing people's photos of the location they're at, I'm like, how do I even know you went there? How do I not know you stole those from the internet? So don't be afraid to take photos of yourself. Ask the people around you. Use tools like LensBuddy. That's a good app. That's like a self-timer photo app. I would use a video and like screenshot it. I would film on TikTok. I used my LensBuddy. I would use little tripods, whatever you got to do to get it done. On the other hand, I do want to say though, don't stress if you don't get the perfect shot. Enjoy the moment, enjoy the memory, but it is nice having content or photos to look back on. Sometimes even just propping the phone up and pressing play on a video, pressing play on the recording button is all you need, and you get to have like a very long video and you can like crop it or do whatever you want with it. On the other hand, I do want to say, I feel like I didn't realize that me taking my little aesthetic photos for my photo dump could actually translate to like having photography as a hobby. So don't be afraid to play around with actual photography if you have a proper camera, like using the right settings and taking beautiful photos of people or scenery. I feel like that's something that I want to get into because I actually had someone DM me this, which was really sweet. And they were like, I know you love taking photos or whatever, but like actually like you could be good at photography. Like you have good like perception of like angles and dimensions and colors and this and that. And I was like, you know what? You're right. I've never thought about that. So maybe I'll pick up photography as a hobby. You can focus on taking photos of things that feel like something to you, like not just like the stereotypical things that would have their photo taken, for example, like a monument, but rather maybe, I don't know, you see a spilled ice cream on the floor and you think of it's kind of metaphorical, taking a photo of that and making a moment out of it. I highly recommend buying like digital cameras or disposables because it just makes taking the photos so much more fun. Okay, so anyways, so those were some of my tips for how to romanticize where you are at and just some of the things I learned myself. There are so many concerns when it comes to solo traveling. For me, just to give a little bit of backstory on my experience with the places I traveled to, in London, they're having a big problem with people stealing phones. So I was so paranoid about my phone getting stolen the whole time that I was just like on edge. I couldn't even bring my phone out. As for Paris, there was just so many people there and so many tourists. So I was kind of afraid of getting pickpocketed in general or just anything happening just because there were so many people. Lisbon actually felt very safe for me. But yeah, I think when you are solo traveling, you just need to be super aware of your belongings, your things, making sure your bag isn't open, make sure you're not leaving things out so people do not steal from you. And of course, just being a girl in general alone, y'all know, we're not trying to get followed. We're not trying to get kidnapped. We're not trying to just all of the above. A safety concern is obviously one of my biggest cons of solo traveling. The other thing that I really struggled with at the beginning was feeling so overwhelmed and tired after having to navigate everything myself. And I actually found out that this online is called decision fatigue. So when you are solely responsible for all of the decisions on the trip, you can get very exhausted and can overall just be very overwhelming. Another thing that can be difficult with solo traveling if you're not like a type A person is organizing and planning all of the logistics. There were definitely a few times I would show up to places and it would be like freaking closed, or I, just didn't plan something properly. But this is kind of more of a me problem. And if you can manage that ahead of time, you won't struggle with that. Now, I could imagine a con for some people would be the fact that they can get lonely. I didn't necessarily feel lonely. I felt FOMO sometimes. Like when I would go to places and I'd hear people with their friends out partying and I'm just like, I wish I had someone to go out with. Or like I would walk past some bars and like there's a whole friend group there and I'm just like, I want to be there. That was the only times I felt like lonely, but it wasn't lonely. It was more like, I'm so jealous. I wish my friends were here. I also could imagine people feeling lonely just spending so much time alone. But I will say, if you already live alone or you spend a lot of time alone, it didn't really make any difference to me being over there. Another obvious one for solo traveling is that it can get expensive, but I think this just depends with what your budget is. And if you set that ahead of time, you can kind of avoid those issues. Another con for solo traveling could be having missed shared experiences with other people. people, which I feel like ties back to the loneliness one. Like there were many times where I wish there were people around me, but honestly, I just was posting everything. So it kind of felt like people were with me, or I would just send so many vlogs to my friends or pictures to my friends. And that kind of made it feel like I wasn't alone, honestly. Some other cons when solo traveling is if you get sick by yourself, it is literally hell. This happened to me in New York and it was so traumatic because you definitely don't have people helping you out and it just feels like the end of the world. But I just abused Uber Eats and, you know, tried my best to work everything out. But that's definitely a fear of mine. I guess I would not want to be sick by myself. The other con that can happen when solo traveling is just feeling unwanted emotions and not being able to regulate them properly, such as being overly stressed or emotional, and just kind of feeling anxious. In times like that, I feel like journaling or calling a friend or just calling someone familiar is definitely helpful, or talking to ChatGPT if you have to, using it as your therapist, or even doing a little MacBook vlog, just talking about your feelings. I also just want to end off this episode by saying that if you are planning on solo traveling, definitely do your research on the places that you are going to beforehand. You can choose locations that are a lot more solo traveling friendly, places that obviously speak your language is a lot more helpful. You're also able to join group tours or join accommodations that are more social, like hostels, which I have never done before, but I'm sure that would be such a fun experience. Another thing that I recommend is attending local events. So you can search up events happening in that city while you're there and seeing if there's anything going on. I feel like this can be a great way to integrate yourself into the city and into the culture and just feeling like you're a part of something, as well as joining even like group classes or group workouts or anything that's group related. Overall, I feel like the message with solo traveling is just being open to spontaneity, being open-minded, being open to having a flexible schedule, being open to saying yes, and just being approachable, letting conversations happen, talking to new people, just saying yes and having that open energy. I really think there are so many benefits that come from solo traveling, and this was one of my favorite trips I've ever taken because of that. I want to tell you guys, it was so funny. One of the nights when I was in London, I was supposed to go out with my friend. She had something come up, so she couldn't go out that night, and I was already ready. I was ready to go, and I was like, okay, in this current moment, this is one of the solo traveling moments where do I stay home alone or do I just try to go out by myself? And I decided, why don't I just go out? You know, what could be the worst that goes wrong? Like, I'm already ready. I'll just go out to this restaurant that I was really excited about. I'll see what happens. This is a type B type of situation because I show up to this restaurant and the kitchen was literally already closed. So I decided to sit at the bar by myself, and I'm like, you know what? People do this, right? People go to the bar by themselves. This was one of the most humbling, out of my comfort zone experiences, because something about sitting at the bar by yourself as a girl ordering a drink, I just felt so awkward, and there was only like a few people beside me, and I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be on my phone. I don't want to give closed energy. My phone was also going to die soon, so I was like, yeah, I feel like I shouldn't be on it, which, side note, maybe get a portable charger if you're traveling alone. So I just kind of like stared at the wall and overheard different conversations beside me, and that was definitely super uncomfortable, but now I can say that I did that. But I was smart about it. I only had one drink and I got my Uber home, and you know, anything more than that, I would have felt a little bit uneasy. Another fun memory from my solo traveling is that night that I said I met with that girl in Paris. We went to like 5 different clubs and we literally stayed until the club ended at like 6 a.m. And it was just so fun. Like, that was something that I've never done before, which is like staying out till that late. And I literally want to do it all over again. Why was that? Like, it was just so much fun. Also, it was like a weird Parisian like underground club that low-key made me feel a little bit uneasy just because I'd never been to something like that. But it was another one of those situations where I kept an open mind and I embraced the fact that that's what the locals do. Anyways, I've been talking for way too long. I'm gonna end the podcast here. I will be posting vlogs from my Europe trip, so if you want to see my solo trip in action, definitely head to my YouTube channel, which is just at Fernanda Ramirez. I had so much fun and I think you're really gonna enjoy those vlogs. So they're going to be up soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I had so much fun talking to you guys, and I will see you very soon. I hope this inspired you to book maybe a little solo trip. Bye, guys.